Hi, I'm Tom, and this is Adult Game Reviews. This week I'm finally reviewing Unbroken by STWAdev. Unbroken is the follow-up to his first visual novel, The Author. Part 7 was just released, which I've been waiting for with bated breath. I got the Unbroken off of STWA's Patreon, and you can play it on Windows, Mac, and Linux. I played an earlier version of the Unbroken, and while an improvement in some ways over the author, I thought the developer traded in some issues for others, so I really wanted to wait before I jump back in, and here we are. By the way, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and like the video if you like it. Okay, let's get into it. Unbroken starts with the MC receiving news that his best friend was killed in action. You are honorably discharged Special Forces soldier who went through some serious trauma. To cope after your discharge, you spent time in backwater dive bars in Asia fighting for money, drinking, and sleeping around.
How you doing?
The first thing that struck me was the MC was kind of a combination between Luke Rockhold, Shaman Moraes, and Pete Davidson. You end up being so successful fighting randoms for pennies that you make your way to the UK version of the UFC. The Unbroken starts right after learning about the death of your best friend. One thing to note is that if you played the author, you do get a bit of a crossover at the very beginning, which I thought it was a really neat addition to keep things in the same universe as the author. Okay, let's get into the visuals. You can see how much of an upgrade the renders are in the Unbroken when compared to his first VN, the author. Unbroken looks gorgeous. All the characters are good looking. Some of my favorite scenes are when you actually get to see a fight, which is visually stunning, and the water is really pretty as well. Overall, very well done. The writing is also top notch. I noticed the very infrequent typo, but the writing in the author was very strong, and the Unbroken is no different. So many VNs have a great idea and are severely limited by the quality of the writing. For me, this can make or break a VN, even more so than the visuals, and the Unbroken did not disappoint. There's very sparse music with no sound effects. This was the biggest issue I had. The few scenes that have music were great, but you have to expect most of the VN to be silent. There were so many scenes that I thought would have been much emotionally heavier if there was music involved. So I do feel like the impact was lessened simply because there was virtually no music. The choices you have mostly affect relationships, while they do actually affect some scenes. The most fun choices for me were during the actual fights, which can determine aspects of how the fight goes. This was very cool to see. It's not super clear how much your choices really affect the main story, but we'll need more updates to really see for sure. Okay, let's get into the real draw, the story. There's so much to the Unbroken which I could talk about in depth, but I will cover a few things here. Don't worry, no spoilers. While the fights are fun and spicy content is pretty good, which, just be warned, it does take some time to get to any, the story is the draw. It's multi-layered. When I said the main character reminded me of Luke Rockhold and Shaman Moraes, it was because he was really good looking for a fighter.
I'm a fucking samurai.
So a big tough guy who could be a model? Yeah, he's gonna get all the ladies, hence the comparison to Pete Davidson. Somehow Pete Davidson has a ton of game. I wonder why.
Oh my god!
However, there is a lot more to the main character than is initially obvious. You're still troubled by your time in the military, which can hit hard emotionally. You have the guilt of things he did or didn't do during his time in the military, and some things that were done to him that were terrible. This struggle plays out with an angel and demon styled plot device. You can choose to try and grow and improve yourself, or continue to make the same womanizing and street fighting mistakes. When you start the VN, it's just you, McNabb, and Amory, but you collect more lost souls along the way. Everyone in the house is trying to grow from their past traumas. I'm not going to say what everyone is dealing with, but I will show you the main love interest. First, you have V, your best friend's sister and one of my favorites. Elspeth, the scary, smart ex-military intelligence officer. Figured I had to mention the two redheads first. You have Ines, V's French best friend, who until part 7 I didn't know much about, but after part 7, I love her.
Marry me.
You have Kana, your crazy talented neighbor, and I can't really say more. And you have Amory, who I think is very sweet, but there hasn't been a lot of character exploration with her in recent chapters. There are a couple other girls that just haven't been explored much, but I assume will be in future parts. One aspect that really stood out is everyone is struggling in some way, which really allowed me to connect with all the characters, not just the love interests. The level of character depth made it really difficult when choosing who to romance, and part 7 didn't make it any easier. I still haven't fully decided because they're all great. At this point in the Unbroken's development, I do feel like the author was a bit heavier emotionally, but I could easily see the Unbroken eventually being a straight up roundhouse kick to the head with your feelings, so be prepared. So, what do I think about the Unbroken? I feel like part 7 was really the turning point in its development. It started to feel like things were really coming together with character depth and the plot in general. It's still a work in progress, but I do feel like it's finally something I can recommend people play. So this is a play for me. If you want to wait for it to finish, I get it, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. I would like to thank all my backers, and if you haven't seen my review of Shale Hill Secrets, you can check it out right here. Thanks again. Until next time.